Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll be talking about hyperspace in the Star Wars universe, and specifically some technologies that I would have liked to see used or used more commonly by the major factions of the universe. No sponsor for today's video, however, I will just take a second to mention that I've been putting a ton of content up as usual on my Clips channel. It's not YouTube Shorts, most of it, it's just videos that are under like a minute and a half long. I got to watch the first 4 episodes of and if you want to see my brief impressions, it's on the Clips channel. If you want to see more than just Star Wars, including Marvel, DC, whatever else, you can check out my Professor X channel, which covers basically anything else with the same clip format. Alright, so to say that hyperspace is a crucial aspect of the Star Wars universe is probably understating things. I believe it's either the Essential Atlas or the Essential Guide to Technology, which calls the hyperdrive and the blaster 2 of the most formative bits of technology in the Star Wars universe. I've covered the basics of traveling through hyperspace in many videos before, but just to summarize, most hyperspace travel takes place across mapped hyperspace lanes, and to travel otherwise is, if not impossible, at least very, very difficult. On screen, hyperspace is really just something that happens in the background. Other than hyperspace tracking in The Last Jedi and the RAM in the same movie, we don't often see it employed in a very interesting way. That's not quite the same with the Star Wars expanded universe. So, the first thing I want to talk about is overcoming one of the main issues of hyperspace travel, and that is a lack of accuracy. If you're jumping to a planet, you'll most likely be at least close to it when you exit hyperspace, because you'll be pulled out by your ship's computer and the gravity produced by the planet. Similarly, interdiction fields created by ships like the Interdictor class Star Destroyer can, against the will of the target ship, both prevent them from jumping to hyperspace and pull them out of transit. And this is the first underused technology, although we do see some precedent for it. Using interdiction fields to facilitate more complex or more accurate hyperspace jumps. And there are really 3 good examples of this that I can point to. So, when the New Republic was attacking Coruscant, for example, in Star Wars Legends during Wedge's Gamble, they knew that once the fleet jumped towards Coruscant, it would be pretty much impossible to call off the attack. The problem was, if Rogue Squadron on the ground couldn't get the planetary shield down, well, the attack was not going to go very well for the New Republic. They came up with a genius strategy. They basically set an Interdictor Star Destroyer away from Coruscant, but in the hyperspace lane that the ships would be traveling down. If the shield didn't go down in time, the Interdictor Star Destroyer would activate, and it would pull the New Republic fleet out of hyperspace, and thus stopping them from running into a battle that they would surely lose. So that's one use of interdictors to help your own side, pull somebody out of a bad situation. But I think the more interesting example is using interdiction fields to make precise hyperspace jumps. In Star Wars Legends, it's often said you can't, at least most times, accurately calculate a jump to the point where it's tactically useful. There were 2 situations where interdiction technology was used to do this very thing. During the Thrawn campaign, Grand Admiral Thrawn used interdiction cruisers to essentially build an edge that his fleet would jump into and thus predictably exit hyperspace. If you know the exact dimensions of the interdiction field you're generating and the incoming vector of the ship which is going to be pulled out of hyperspace, you can get a really accurate idea of where the ship will end up. The problem with this is that you need to have an actual interdiction Star Destroyer in the battle, and you're somewhat limited to only your reinforcements getting those precise jumps. However, we see the New Republic do something, in my opinion, even more clever in Edge of Victory 2. They essentially have a shell of an interdiction cruiser which they send in alone to their target area, which generates the field for several minutes and then self-destructs. That way the fleet can come out exactly where they want to, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The somewhat strange thing is, you don't see the New Republic, or as far as I'm aware, any other faction using this strategy, and it actually makes sense as something that you could design a specific cheap vessel around. Add an interdiction generator, the cheapest you can find, add basically a ship with a small shell, which is totally okay with being destroyed, and send it in remote operated. Maybe it's a droid, maybe it's a ship that's controlled from far away, whatever. I can imagine it being almost like a probe droid or something, or maybe it has its own hyperdrive and attempts to recover itself after the arriving fleet enters the area. Either way, sending the scout ship so the rest of your fleet arrives in a predictable way just makes too much sense. Now, I say all of this when A lot of times Star Wars just ignores the fact that jumps are supposed to not be completely accurate and will have ships jumping in and immediately broadsiding another vessel. That's totally okay too if that's what the author or the director wants to go with, but I do personally like my explanation. I do also want to note that the New Republic also developed a technique which could get through interdiction bubbles. So on the way in, although their hyperdrive would be stopped by the interdiction field, they used what was known as a hyperwave inertial momentum sustainer to basically keep flying through hyperspace. So you hit the field, your hyperdrive does stop, but you continue to travel into the interdicted zone. This only worked going out to in, but it makes the use of these little probes or some of the other techniques that I've discussed even more, I think, practical. And that actually ties into the second piece of technology that I think makes a lot of sense. That is Interdiction Minds. This is one that should have been used all the time if we're talking about practical military applications which could have made their way into the Star Wars universe. Interdiction Minds were used occasionally. The Hapens famously used them against Warlord Zinj at the Battle of Dathomir. The idea is you drop an interdiction mine and it keeps ships from being able to jump to hyperspace. Instead of one big interdiction field, the mines are essentially making a bunch of small ones, preventing enemy ships from leaving. Now, there were downsides. Interdiction mines typically could not be remotely turned off or on. Rather, when you drop the mine, it's effective for a certain period of time, say 30 minutes, which also means that your own ships can't retreat. This would have been perfect for the Empire. Interdictor Star Destroyers or cruisers were very expensive and they were very rare. Interdiction mines, however, could have fit into the existing portfolios and armaments of Star Destroyers, and it would have largely prevented one of the Rebel Alliance's most successful attack strategies, the hit and run. That being said, there could have been maybe some cost reasons why this wasn't more common. However, the technology could have almost certainly been adapted to other forms. I would have liked to see things like an interdiction missile, which in a last-ditch effort could have been fired towards the escape vector of a retreating fleet to try to prevent their escape. The only other technique I want to mention is weaponizing hyperspace, and in the Black Fleet Crisis we learn that this is something the Empire was actively trying to do. I don't see why it would have been so difficult. Yes, hyperdrive weaponry would have been very expensive. You need to attach a hyperdrive to a missile or whatever else. What the Empire was trying to do is different, firing weapons from inside hyperspace, having an exit and hit a target. But if you're attaching it to a very, very high yield weapon, it makes sense. And this was actually the principle behind the Galaxy gun. You can put the gun anywhere, fire the hyperspace capable missile, have it reach the target, and boom. The thing about that that's sort of weird is just how powerful the missiles were, but I think it could have made sense even for tactical strikes. I mean, it's really just a Y-wing with less steps. But guys, that's how I would have changed how Star Wars used hyperspace. Some of the ideas that I had, certainly almost all of them were taken from existing source material, but these are the ones that I think could have made sense to see employed more commonly. But that's all I have for today. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.